Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We are excited and honored to have Victor Turner, Senior Director, Financial Systems Administration of LexisNexis. Victor is sharing with us how they are enhancing reporting efficiency from 280 days in savings to 1,682 days per quarter with Dodeca. Please enter your questions in the question pane. We will address them at the conclusion of the presentation. The webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website shortly. I will now turn it over to Victor.
All right, thanks, Julie. And hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you anytime I get to talk to people that understand or want to learn about Dodeca. It's a good day. So yeah, just you can see by the title and what Julie said, we just want to explain some of the value that we've gotten out of Dodeca, where we are now with Dodeca as well. So today I'm just going to tell you a little bit about LexisNexis, a little bit about our past with Dodeca. We started working with it in 2018, and then show you how we go from 280 to 1,682 days per quarter. That is an estimate. I believe it's a conservative estimate, and we'll talk a little bit about that. The impact of Dodeca beyond just the savings, and then walk you through some of our current projects and current priorities. And then we should have some time for questions at the end as well. Okay. So first of all, LexisNexis provides legal solutions, news solutions, business insights as well, and we help our customers assess, predict, and manage risk. And that's our LexisNexis risk solution side, our LexisNexis legal solution. Also, though, we're a part of a company called Relix, which offers a lot of different solutions. Elsevier is more your Elsevier science, so science journals, science publications are part of their tools. And then we also have Read Exhibitions, which does a lot of trade shows and that sort of thing. And so in terms of the Dodeca journey, it started in 2018 with LexisNexis and LexisNexis Risk Solutions. We've since moved Elsevier and are working in the future to put all of Relix on Dodeca, including RX, which will probably be the last to go. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. But we have seen value in Dodeca ever since we started using it in 2018. We went from an initial, I think, 375 users to now we have 1,000 user licenses just because of the value. So behind Dodeca at LexisNexis and really Relix, you have my team. And, you know, I'm very fortunate to work with these individuals. You know, we have a couple of folks, Andrew and Stefan, based in the UK, Jan Orsolino, who's part of our team from Manila. And then we have a number of folks here in Dayton, Jimmy Hellier, Jack Culverson, Doug Hines, Josh Baker, and Evan Schlageter. And just a great group of guys, always asking the question, how can we do things faster? How can we do things with less effort? And so many times, Dodeca is the answer. And so if you've seen any of our presentations in the past, you've seen some of the very creative things that they've done. And if you recall, maybe you were at the Dodeca Summit in 21 in Nashville. And that presentation that I did there was how we saved 280 days a quarter with Dodeca. And you know, that link is in this presentation. I invite you to go and watch that. I'm trying not to cover what we covered there. I'll give you a brief update that covers a little bit of what we did there, but we went into much more detail. And actually in that same summit, Jimmy Hellier from my team also did a pretty extensive presentation on how to do some of the things that we were doing. I kind of gave an overview. Jimmy followed up with some very detailed presentations that were really good on how to do some of the things that we do. So if we go back to 2018, just to briefly cover it, we did a benchmark study with PwC, and they found that we were spending over 27,000 hours annually on management reporting preparation, which was the equivalent of 16 FTEs. They said we produced over 1,000 recurring reports. I would argue they stopped counting at 1,000 because there were so many. And really a lot of this was the proliferation of spreadsheets across really at that time 200 desktops. That was just in one division, and that each of those reports we were spending 2.5 hours of prep time. And so some of those reports, that would be 2.5 hours at our, at our RF1, 2.5 hours at RF2, 2.5 hours at budget, and then additional time spent in month-end close, because depending on the time of year, depends on the columns that we want in our reports. And if you recall from that Nashville presentation, we have a very creative way that we can accomplish all of those different column sets for our reporting at runtime. And so we prepare them once, and now they're part of our reports. I'm going to show you actually how we're redoing that. We've reimagined and redesigned that. Josh Baker on my team has led that, and I'm just going to show that to you towards the end of the project, or the presentation today, and what we're doing currently as we move to the cloud. We were looking for an in-state vision. We wanted to utilize a central team to maintain the reports and really get our decision support teams doing decision support and not coming up with numbers. We wanted to use standard templates for all our reporting. What standard templates looked like before is somebody would put together an HSGet Smart View template, send it out across the globe, and then everybody would go and customize it, thereby making it go from standard to unique individual reports. And then if there was a change, everyone had to go in on their own version and make updates. Now it's all centralized through Dodeca. One change is made one time, and now every time somebody runs that report, they get the new change. We wanted to allow drill through to base level details, and then we wanted to automate our reports. And so Dodeca was the tool. We did a proof of concept. The Applied OLAP team gave us a license for 6 months, and we proved it. And obviously we were successful in that, improving that. And so we went and have been working with Dodeca ever since and continuing to innovate. One of the things that we really faced in terms of challenges, and this really happens on kind of the technology side of the business. I mean, my team's a technology team. We roll up inside of finance. But one of the things that people look at commonly at Dodeca and go, it's Excel based. We really want to get away from Excel. And it's because of all of the cons on the right-hand side of this slide. Formula errors, poor document management. One spreadsheet can become dozens, as I mentioned earlier. Who's got the data when we're all like working on updating a spreadsheet? Sometimes you got to find out who has the spreadsheet. There's limited security. There's a higher cost over time. And limited backup capability. If you got to put it out on a shared drive somewhere, and then it can be backed up. Dodeca solves all that, because the great thing about Excel is what Dodeca enables you to continue to get value from. So easy to use formulas. We still use Excel-based formulas in our reports. Quick visualizations. A lot of software tools actually have exports to Excel. So we like some of the more sophisticated reporting tools, as people will call them, but everybody's number one question about those tools is, how do I get this data in Excel so I can work with it and play with it? And the reason why is because Excel democratizes data. It allows almost anyone to analyze data, and it's very easy to learn. There's low entry and startup costs and IT dependency. And then there's a wide user base. I went out and did some searching. There's an estimated 1 to 1.5 billion people on the planet who know how to use Excel. And so you have some built-in skills already in much of your resources and many of your folks inside of finance. So those were some of the reasons that we went with Dodeca, because I mean, I've been doing what I do really for over 27 years, working with Hyperion systems at LexisNexis. And a lot of that time I spent trying to get away from the cons of Excel and couldn't. We tried and could not. As some people said, you're going to take Excel out of my cold, dead hands. And so with Dodeca, we stopped fighting it and actually embraced it. And so because of that, we started looking at, okay, how much value are we getting out of this? And that's really that 280 days. And so I just ran a full year. I ran January 1st of 2024 through December 31st. And what I found is we actually classify our reports as either Hyperion reports. We have about 156 unique Hyperion reports, and those are pulling data out of our on-prem planning systems or on-prem Excel, S-based cubes. And then we have other reports. There's 150 of those. that we run. And you can see we have 2,800 distinct users of the one set and almost 4,000 of the other. And that's obviously we don't have that many users in total, but this is how many times we have distinct users going after each of these reports. In terms of the number of times that they ran those, total for the Smart View type reports, 380,000 last year. For the other Excel, 304,000. Now, just the fact that we can answer that question, I mean, like I said, when we did a PwC benchmarking survey, they had to go out and ask everyone to send in and save out on a SharePoint drive. And so it was a very manual exercise just to come up with over 1,000 reports. And we've narrowed that down to really just a little over 300 reports across 2 divisions. And we know exactly how many times people were running them. We also in our benchmarking found, most of our SmartView Excel reports were running HSGet functions, and that Dodeca refreshes 75% faster than SmartView Excel with HSGet. I mentioned that PwC found out that we took 2.5 hours of preparation time per SmartView and Excel report, and that was an average. I honestly think that was a little low. And so that's how I was able to arrive at this estimate. So again, in runtime savings, 3,814 days. So that's 14.7 FTEs time. And you have to remember with HSGet and SmartView, when you're running and refreshing the report, analysts sit there and wait for it to be done, and it hoses up their Excel. And Dodeca doesn't do that, even though it's based on Excel, very Excel-like. If a report is running, not only do they run faster, but my Excel is free and I can still do things in Excel. And then the preparation time we have is 4.75 FTEs per month. And so again, 1,233 days of preparation time saved. Yeah, we still do preparation time in reports, but we do it once. And one person does it for the report. And we really accomplish that. We have 2 full-time FTEs. And then we have some ad hoc FTEs that I estimate are about 1 ad hoc FTE a month. And so we get a lot of value out of this. We've traded, working on what the numbers are for actually analyzing the numbers. And these other Excel reports, these gave us the capability to work with our relational data warehouses and pull data back. And so think about the example where somebody goes into a data warehouse and they get an Excel data dump, they do VLOOKUPs, they do pivot tables in order to get that data in a format that they want, and then they go off and create a report. What we do is actually pull that data back in a formatted report for them, and you really save a lot of time and energy and effort if you have like 30 or 40 or 50 people wanting to do that same sort of data dump exercise with VLOOKUPs. And so a lot of those other reports are those types of things. So it gave us a front end, unlike any other, to our data warehouse data. I wanted to show you this. Because we like the idea of looking at this data, we created this dashboard, and I've hidden some names, but I can tell you which report had errors and who the person was that had the errors. We track the performance of our reports through this visual graphic, and this is all enabled through Dodeca as a tool set. We also look at our usage, our report usage, and you can see we have peaks. Those coincide with our forecasting cycles. That's because we put our input forms into Dodeca and have saved a ton of time with those. Not only do we save time, but we have learned that our users have, because we have 19 dimensions in our cubes, and we don't forecast all those, but we forecasted quite a few. Our users have confidence in the data that they did not have with just SmartView forms before. And then we can track our users. We can see the top reports. See this 1.1a forecast report that was ran 48,332 times last year. That's our input for our forecast. And the thing that amazed us is once the system was locked and people were no longer inputting data, they were still running the report and running the form. And so unlike SmartView, where you use the forms just to get the data in, they were using this as a report as well. And so that was a shock to us. But again, people said, well, all my data is there. And so we've presented on that forum before, and it's been very useful. So the impact, I've covered some of this: decreased manual effort, improved quality and accuracy. If you can still have an error with a formula, but once one person finds it, we correct it, and now everybody has the right formula. In the past, it was possible for errors to be on multiple different reports and multiple different errors. Greater mobility across business lines. People, everyone knows how to run a Dodeca report. So we've had use cases where people have moved from one area to another with ease. Also, people out sick and somebody comes in and actually takes over for them because there's a standard set of reports. Improved onboarding, it's much quicker. People don't have to learn how to build all of these reports. They're there for them. And it definitely improved reporting and analytics. We're doing analysis that we couldn't do. Some of the example reports that we have today, you could only run once a year because you had to put them together manually. And now we do monthly, or we do weekly, or whatever the case might be, simply because there's no more gathering of data, pulling it together, doing VLOOKUPs, doing pivot tables. I mentioned the confidence. And again, we have entry-level folks working on the reports. So our conclusion is that finance spends less time and they have more reporting capability with fewer errors with Dodeca over SmartView, Excel, and other reporting tools that are available. And so our usage has only grown over the years that we've been using it. Now, recently, as I mentioned, we are going to the cloud, and we actually just in April had one division go live in the cloud. And so because of that, we had to reevaluate our usage. We had to reprove the case, which honestly, I wasn't afraid of, because Dodeca has more than proven its value. And so, we did some feedback. We did our rows and our buds, if you've ever done this. And you can see we had excellent feedback from all of our users. They really made the case for us, along with our statistics and our data, that we could show how much it's used, how much it's utilized. And it's been an amazing thing to see on this project. We've had people who were questioning, I don't really think we need that Dodeca, coming to us and going, can Dodeca do this? And the answer is yes. And so it's been fun to watch, really just the tide turn, because there were some on the project who really weren't familiar with Dodeca, and as they've learned what it can do, it's helped to solve their problems as well. And I'll talk about a few of those. Okay, so this picture down in the bottom right-hand corner kind of describes where we are right now. We have one foot on the dock and one on the boat, and the dock is on-prem and the boat is in the cloud. And so I feel like never before I can speak to a broader audience of users in the Hyperion space, because we know what it's like to be on-prem and we know what it's like to be in the cloud. We've got several divisions still on-prem. They're going live later this year in July. And then we've got the one division now that has gone live in the cloud. And obviously we've been working in the cloud for about a year and a half now. And so we use Dodeca as our standard reporting. We use it to feed data to our parent company. We use data to go after and read and write into our data warehouse. And we even drill back into the base level ledgers on-prem, into our PeopleSoft and Oracle financial ledgers. So again, using Dodeca. This is our cloud view. And so again, we are going live with Oracle Fusion. That's already live on one division. We're using Oracle's Autonomous Data Warehouse in the cloud. And we've got Dodeca working in the cloud with Essbase 21c in the cloud. And so we have not only our forecasting and actual reporting that we're pulling into Dodeca with standard reports for our entire company now across all divisions, as well as unique reports for each division. But we also have input forms that we're using. So things like we get data from Workday, and our company's not the most disciplined when it comes to getting our Workday data correct. And so we have adjustments that are input on a monthly basis via Dodeca into the data warehouse, and then are fed to our workforce planning application. We're currently working on pulling global payroll into our autonomous data warehouse, and we're going to use Dodeca reports for that. And the great thing is we're pulling out the security for this highly sensitive data from EPBCS, the planning application, the workforce planning application, and replicating that through our data warehouse in our Dodeca reporting. So we maintain that security once. Lots of great use cases. We have some data that we don't really have a source for, so we have input forms that we've built in Dodeca to feed that into our data warehouse, and then that feeds it into our planning and our S-based reporting cubes. So yeah, this has been a project that's consumed quite a lot of our time, and we're essentially starting over, rebuilding all of our Dodeca reports, which is it's a challenge, but it's also a great opportunity. And certainly some of the reporting that we built, we know much more now about Dodeca than we did when we started. But as I mentioned, we've got 3 divisions going live in the cloud in July and a 4th division sometime later, and that'll get everybody there and everybody using Dodeca at that point, fully and in a standard way. As I mentioned, we're starting over with our standard reports for all of RELX, and then we're pulling that workday and payroll data in. We've recently released, we do a lot with Gen AI technologies. I mean, we're a research company, and so you can imagine, much like if you're using Gen AI like I am to search the web, when attorneys search and do work, they are using our Gen AI based tools. And so we're doing a whole transformation program internally. We're tracking the progress, milestones, and financial impact of that in our data warehouse and through Dodeca. And so that's something that we've added recently. We've got new drill through in the cloud to Oracle Fusion ERP. And really what we're doing is we're pulling that data out of the ERP into our ADW. One of the huge wins of our project is we refresh our data now every 15 minutes in the cloud from our Oracle ERP and our planning system. And part of that is we actually just pull the change in our ERP every 30 minutes, and then it takes 15 minutes to load right now. And that's with one division. We expect that time to go up, maybe 5 to 10 minutes when we get all the divisions in. Our testing so far has been really good there. Our refresh times prior on-prem were anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half. So this has been a huge win for us. But then we pull all that data into our ADW tables, and our users can drill through, look at journal level detail using the Dodeca tool. I think one of the things that is the most difficult for this project going live to the cloud is that my best estimate is we have 15 to 20 SmartView input forms for this first go live, and I'm afraid that number is going to increase. And we're hearing things that I used to be able to input via Dodeca are taking me 2-3 hours now, things I used to do in minutes. And so because of our focus on just getting the project live, I know Tim and Applied OLAP and their team have been doing a lot of work on getting Dodeca to work with EPBCS, and we've just not been able to stay on top of their latest innovations, but it's going to be a huge focus once we get live. We already have people screaming for it. They've gone from all of my data on one form to do most of my input to now I have multiple SmartView input forms, and it feels like a huge step backwards for us that we're going to have to work through. So I mentioned the input and adjustment forms to feed the data into our ADW. The other thing I wanted to share today is that we use column templates to be more efficient. And we've shared this with you before, but when we were rebuilding these, one of the things that we noticed is the column templates that we had were great, but when you have 150 reports and you want to make a change to your column template, you have to go make 150 updates. So we've implemented a column template that is used by all of those reports. And if you want to change it, you change the template, and now all of your reports are updated. So I kind of want to walk you through that use case example as something that we've seen as an efficiency that we haven't done before. And so to give you an idea, this is what our P&L looks like, for example. And you can see in these columns, this one is run for December month to date. It has a 24 underlying view of it, and obviously this is run for 24 actuals. And you can see when we're running December, we're comparing our 24 underlying to our RF3, our reforecast 3. And then we're comparing 24 versus 23. Out here, we're also comparing it to budget and RF3. And we have, I don't know, 80 to 100 different column sets, depending on the time of year that you're running the report, depends on, the columns that you want. And that's what led to a lot of that time of preparation that we talked about earlier. But I want to bring in let me pull up my Dodeca. And sorry, it's behind here. Okay, so this is our Dodeca application, our new application that is pulling from the cloud. And what you can see here is that we have this drop down. And these are all of we actually added column sets now that all the divisions are on one, simply because various parts of the organization use quarterly phased. Then we have this corporate organization that's really Relics corporate that we didn't have to work with before. So we've now got all of these column sets. And when you run this, you choose, hey, it's the time of year where I want to compare to RF2. And so now that is a specific set of columns. Well, what would happen before is on this P&L, it would actually delete the sets that you didn't want and then refresh the report. But that required us to go through and actually edit each of the column sets on every report if we were to make a change. So what we've done is we've created this standard column set, and this is actually showing all the various columns that we have. So here's that corp phase I mentioned, and you can see this goes all the way out to column ADQ, ADS, and then we've got like a quarterly phased. We've got, our month in, year to go, our month in, no year to go, because one division wants year to go included, another division doesn't. And so you can see we have all of these various column sets that we can set up. And then on our actual report, we don't have columns. And what happens at runtime when the user selects that selector as to which column set that they want, it actually goes to that column set template and it pulls in the columns for you so that it only pulls and runs those columns that you choose. And again, all of my reports over here, at least most of my reports over here, use these column sets. And if I want to change them, I just change it in one place as opposed to having to go to each of the columns. And this is all done through the workbook scripts that are a part of the tool. And you can see here, we have our list of dimensions that we want in our rows. And through, if I expand over here, let me scroll up, and apologies, I'm on a smaller screen here just to make it easier for some of you. We have a list here of the dimensions that are in my rows. And so what happens at runtime, we have every dimension set in our column set, okay, except for accounts, because all of our, most of our our reports that use these column sets, they have the accounts in the rows always. But it can vary as to what other dimensions we have in our different row sets. So on this one, we just define, okay, I'm pulling in my account, my analysis, and my management org. And then when it pulls that data back, it actually deletes out of the columns those dimensions that we have designated to be in the rows. Then we set up our rows, and this is all the dimensionality that we set up. And over here, we actually do the formatting for that row. So we have all kinds of different formats, whether it's borders, is this a number, is it a percent, how many decimal places do we want, what color do we want the rows and columns to be. If you think back to that Excel template that I showed you, that actual report, some columns are yellow, some are just white. All of that is handled in this column. And then over here, we have a named range, and it inserts those columns in that named range, copies the formatting across, and then runs the report all at runtime, all very quickly. And it has made our reports much easier to maintain. And again, we don't change those column sets very often, but when we do, not to have to go touch every report is a huge win. And honestly, these are the types of things that we've been able to do with Dodeca, and that we've been able to automate and really just, I think I said on that presentation in Nashville, we just try to squeeze every ounce of productivity out of this tool that we can. And we really just have not been disappointed. A lot of times it's our imagination that's the limitation and not the tool. So this has been a huge win for us, and something that, even though we had to redesign all of our reports because we've got new dimensionality, this gave us an opportunity to use that advanced learning that we've collected. And so again, here's that report that I've run, straight out the numbers. This is really my last slide that I want to share, and that's just our partners. And it's funny, in this day and age, the vendor that you buy the tool from oftentimes, unfortunately, is no longer considered a partner, but we absolutely consider Applied OLAP a partner. We work very closely with them. They are super responsive to our needs, to our ideas. A number of things that we've come up with over the years, they've implemented into the tool. And so it really does feel like a partner, and not someone who sold us a product and we never see again, or the sales rep that we worked with left the company or whatever. Applied OLAP, I think, treats their employees well, and they retain them, and that shows up, and their employees really love what they do, and we really like working with them. The other is just S Analytics. It's a consulting firm that we work with as well. When we've needed some bandwidth, they've been super helpful. And so just to call out to them as well. I think they're an Applied OLAP partner also. And so someone that we've used to help us advance some of this, when we've needed to. So with that, that's really all that I wanted to share with everyone today. I did want to leave time for questions. So what questions do you have for me?
Hang on one second.
Okay.
But I wanted to take this moment to thank you and tell everybody that we will be posting this onto our website, the updated version, and we will try to put it in a format that people can get to. Apparently, there's been an issue with people accessing GoToWebinar, so a bunch of people were not able to join the meeting that were expecting to do so.
Okay.
And I think we also have Tim Toe, the founder and president, as a panelist as well, so he can join in with any color commentary he might have. He's currently on self-mute. And so a question that we have is, he can't unmute for some reason, and I can't seem to send unmute request. Let's see if that works.
Oh, I got it to unmute.
Great.
So I didn't get. So I'll go ahead. I had a question for you, Victor. So today you connect directly to Workday. You connect to e-business suite, those types of things. In your future state, as you go forward with this, digital transformation to the cloud, and you have ADW as your data source, will you be taking all of your data out of Workday and putting it into ADW, or will you be querying it directly back into, or from Dodeca back into those source systems, or a combination of both?
Yeah, so right now we're using REST APIs because it's a very secure way to pull that data out of Workday, for instance, right into the ADW. And so that's what we're doing. Now, those adjustments that we talked about that we make, it's always been our dream to send those back to Workday to help clean up the data, because finance is essentially on a monthly basis going through and cleaning up the data based on what they know of the organization. And so that is definitely on the future roadmap, and accomplishing that, and hopes to accomplish that. And so, but again, we're just not there yet. We need to get live first.
Right, right. And let us know if you need anything as far as writing back into Workday, for example, through those REST APIs. So we certainly would love to partner with you on that. Now, one interesting observation I have from some conversations I've had in the past week or so, something that was introduced at the S-Space Symposium last year that caused a bit by surprise was the fact that S-Space will now be delivered in ADW going out into the future. So were you aware of that fact? Does that change what you might think?
So I think, yeah, I know there's something that we've experimented with, and apologies, I'm blanking on it. It's the partition capability from
Federated
the ADW.
partitions, right?
Yeah, we've done some experimenting with that. It wasn't quite, we made this decision not to go with that in late 23, because that's when we really started doing our build. But it's something that, in talking to Oracle, they were a release or two away at that time from getting it to the point where we were looking to use it. So we are using OCIDI to move data out of the ADW into S-Space. But we expect at some point that that's going to change again once we get on the other side of the project. So I don't know if that's what you're talking about, Tim, or if that's part of that, but
Yeah, part of it, I think, the other part is that, what it's going to do for S-Space in the world is that, any ADW customer will have S-Space. So I was told this, basically it's a zero footprint S-Space. It's built into the database. So much like you see today with Application Express, that product kind of took off when it became delivered automatically with Oracle database, right? So it's just there and developers can use it. So, that might be something going forward in the future that's a consideration. It may actually lead to different types of applications for S-Space as well. So,
yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
All right, we do have a few
S-Space is
questions.
part of, yeah, just one other comment. S-Space is part of the ERP, but it's very tied down and locked down, and so far not super happy with it. But and sorry, go ahead, Julie.
We're
Oh, no.
looking, we're trying to find the right people at Oracle that can help us get at least some limited access to that ERP version of S-Space, much like we have with EPM.
Okay.
All right, someone's asking for specific Dodeca use cases where it could be used effectively. I don't know if that's too broad of a question.
Yes. So for us, again, I think the big win was connecting to S-Space cubes, running standard reports with S-Space cubes, where you don't have individual Excel files on everyone's machines. So again, one standard report can become 200 individual reports sitting on individual laptops or PCs that everyone's using. So that was the huge win for us. But beyond that, it's any use case where we have something that's maybe in a relational table. Sometimes it's actually a report where we want to pull data out of S-Space alongside of a relational table. So again, that's where the Workday data, the payroll data comes in. These other data sources that finance often wants to bring together with S-Space. Very simple to do with Dodeca. You can connect to various sources. We've connected to Oracle databases. We've connected to Microsoft SQL databases. And you pull that data in a nice formatted way. You can have these selectors where people, really filter to the data they want. And then it all works really well and seamlessly with Excel. And so those are the major use cases that we've seen. Also in those relational tables, we've even had where we've pulled data out of relational, corrected data, and pushed it back to a data warehouse or a relational table. Again, things that people were just doing manually. And then the great thing is you can create a report on that. So the one use case that we get often is, hey, we need to collect data from 15 people. We normally either send out 15 versions of the spreadsheet, everyone sends back theirs, and somebody collates it themselves and does a report. And the problem with that is the moment they collate the report, somebody goes, oh, I got a correction, and they send a new copy of their data. The other option is that you share a spreadsheet out on a SharePoint or a website, and everybody goes and updates it. But again, you're all fighting each other for updating that. And even when that's done, you still have to build a report off of it. So in those use cases, we build a form that everybody does the input, and then on top of that, we build a report. And so that those 5 changes that come in after the deadline, all you do is rerun the report once they've done the input. So those are some of the strongest use cases we've had inside of finance, because you can't go buy a system for everything and implement it. So think about what your users use in Excel, and that's a candidate for Essbase, and to make it more efficient.
And you've had a few other types of applications you've written internally too, right? We see like a lot of customers doing applications that aren't the traditional reporting or planning, forecasting things. And you have some of those too, right?
Well, yeah, we do. We have what we call our R2D2 application, which we submit change. So this is requests to move metadata around in our Essbase hierarchies, for example. We do approvals through that. We capture. We even do, because when we make those changes, we have to do them in UAT and we have to prove that they were tested. We actually created a standard validation report that everyone runs. Prior to this, people would just run their own Excel validation reports, upload them to SharePoint. We would have to chase them. And I always lived in fear that somebody put up the wrong spreadsheet, or because we make hundreds of changes to our hierarchies. But now we have one standard process. They run that report and then they check a box that says, yes, this is correct. And now that's my evidence for my audit when people come in. So yeah, we have a number of applications like that as well. That's a good point, Tim.
A few more questions. Where is the data submitting to ADW coming from?
It's a great question. So we have some of our underlying systems. So billing systems, for example, we've grown a lot through acquisition. And so we're not on one platform when it comes to some of our operational data. And so some of that we feed directly into ADW, but some of it we actually, unfortunately, need somebody to pull the data, have a look at it, make some changes, make some decisions, collate it, and then upload. And so we have some of that. And like I said, that Workday example, we have an option for them to just go right in over top of that data and insert adjustments, because maybe somebody moved and it's just not in the system. The example I used is I once went from one VP to another, and it took like 4 or 5 months for that to show up in our Workday system. And obviously, finance already knew about it. So now they have the capability when that sort of thing happens, and our managers just haven't gotten around to making the change in Workday, to go in and make that adjustment. And then we've also, we do allocation percentages, we do allocation logic in our ADW. Well, those percentages are things that finance agrees on, and we've got forms in Dodeca that feed those percentages in to run those allocations.
Okay. What is the roadmap to connect EPBCS effectively?
Yeah, Tim, that might be a you question.
Yes.
I think there's we've made tremendous strides in what we're doing with our EPM Cloud Connector, trying to make it as close to what people have with Essbase before. Obviously, Essbase is the underpinnings of EPM Cloud, so whether it's PBCS, FCCS, prop costing, or the tax reporting modules, they all ride on top of Essbase. We've had one customer in particular that, and I think they're on the call, that has really pushed the limits of what we can do with that to this point, to make it as compliant as possible. They have a lot of reports they're converting. We're working very hard to make sure that we can keep up and make sure they can do everything they could do previously in Essbase on the EPM cloud platform. So in their case, it's a lot of freeform planning. So essentially Essbase SaaS. We have worked with Oracle as well to help improve APIs. So we have heard that there's some progress there. We hope to hear more at Kscope about progress in the API levels that'll help us do even more. And then finally, we've doing a lot of stuff on the infrastructure side with things like OAuth and that type of thing. So yeah, in our next release, we're doing a lot more functionality where it'll be easier to connect and validate OAuth and use those types of authentications not only against the cloud applications, but even potentially against your relational databases that you have. So we'll be able to direct connect to those using those tools. So there's a lot we've been working on. I think, Victor, part of the question was for you though as well. So moving where you've got stuff in Essbase today to pulling stuff from PBCS. I know you're planning to keep Essbase in part of your long-term plan for your digital transformation, but how much stuff will you do directly against the EPM cloud applications? I know you haven't really started that much yet, but
yeah, it's a good question. And so we pull our data out of ePBCS into the ADW to load into Essbase. So we have access to it. Our big push is going to be to get data into ePBCS from Dodeca, simply because of the limitations of Smart View forms. Our on-prem Dodeca form has 4 dimensions in the rows, and then 2 separate dimensions that 99% of the time it's just one member, but on a rare occasion you actually might use different combinations of those other 2. And the way our Dodeca form works is it pulls up that one form that gives you that 99% answer. And if you've got in that intersection those rare occasions where you have combinations of the other 2, it gives you additional tabs with those. So in one refresh, as an analyst, I get all my data, and for what the intersections I define, and I don't have to go to multiple forms to hit multiple intersections, which is kind of what we're fighting right now with the one division that's gone live. So my answer is, as soon as we can get past go lives, so I'm thinking later this year, Q3, early Q4, we're going to start looking at what are our options. We've talked about it. We've had conversations with Tim. I think we've talked to that one client. We'll probably catch up with them again to see where they're at that point. Because again, we've taken a step back in that area for sure. If we can do any reporting long term, because we do have an ASO cube in ePBCS, I think that's a second priority, but certainly not the highest at this point.
All right, that's what I was going to ask. Are you going to go against that when you have the opportunities? So we do have a number of our customers hitting different modules and obviously many different pods today. So that's becoming much more common in our world. Any more questions, Julie?
Nope, that's it for the questions.
Okay.
I wanted to thank Victor for taking time out of his busy schedule to prepare and present today. So thank you very much for that. We appreciate that. And we're glad that you consider Applied OLAP as a partner in your Dodeca journey. And we look forward to working with you for the next 10 years as well. So thank you so much. And I just wanted to bring to everybody's attention that in the chat, I posted the Kscope 25 registration link, as well as our discount code to save $100 and to enter our raffle for a $100 MasterCard gift card. Please be sure to be there in time for Sunday for our Dodeca Symposium, which will have content from Kroger, MasterCard, and GE Vernova. So thank you so much for joining this meeting, and it will be posted on our website shortly. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.